I'm ready.
Oh, I was getting nervous. Where's Diane?
Okay, at 6 o'clock, we're gonna call the meeting to order. Our first part of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second that.
Okay, it's been moved and second that we approve the agenda. Can we adopt this by, what's the word?
Acclamation.
By what?
Acclamation.
Acclamation. Do I hear any objections? Hearing none. The agenda is approved. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
I move that we approve tonight's consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. Do I hear any objections? Hearing none, we'll approve the agenda by acclamation. Okay. Elijah, you're up.
So first off, we won the 4A volleyball tournament last month, which was truly incredible for our girls. It was a really good game and went on for a long time. It was like it went to a lot of points. There, but it was a long time ago, and I can't remember that. We've had a rise in winter sport athletes from previous years. With that, for the past couple of years, we haven't had a girls JV2 basketball, but this year we actually do. And we have a really large girls wrestling team. With that, we have a swimming tournament on Sunday the 15th at North Bend. We have the Les Schwab basketball tournament on the 19th to the 21st. And we have the Coast Classic wrestling tournament on the 13th to the 14th. On a different note, we had the Fine Arts Assembly last week, which showcased choir, drama, and band, which was really nice. They all did excellent. And we have, I believe, the first band concert on the 11th and the, I think, first choir concert on the 18th. Along with that, drama, their first play, the drama club's first play, The Haunting of Will Shakespeare, has started, and this week has its final showing on Friday through Sunday. And the week before Thanksgiving, Speech and Debate competed at St. Mary's and won all of the acting events and came first, second, and third in debate. Our welders went to the Oregon Welding League, and we had 7 placers. Glenn Crook won second overall, and Hunter Baker got second got first in intermediate welding. And our robotics alliance went to Roseburg to compete and finished first. We have 3 new clubs: archery at Blossom Gulch, chess club every Monday, which started today, and we have the esports that will start after winter break. And along with clubs, ASB and MHS charity program are hosting a holiday food drive, which will, which all of the TAC classes, advisory classes are just trying to collect cans and stuff for the holidays and charity. The classroom door decorating contest is starting this month with all of the TAC classes, advisory classes, competing against each other in their own houses or, and that's going to be really fun. And parent teacher conferences had good attendance with parents and teachers both, and a really good turnout came with that. And finally, advisory classes are working to prepare kids for the future by looking more in depth at note taking right now, and trying to prepare kids for learning how to take notes.
It's like you guys were very successful since our last meeting. A lot of wins and
First place.
a lot of first places. Congratulations to everybody.
Thanks.
Okay, we received a letter of interest about having a student representative from Destinations. I hope you all had a chance to read it. There was a link on online.
I'm sorry. Is it in our board packet?
It is. It should be.
Page 18, it's a back page. Oh, you're on.
Is that it?
Yep.
Cody Jones?
Yep.
Yep. Doesn't look like Cody was able to join us tonight, but
I said I do love this.
I love it too.
I love it too. It's such a well-written letter and everything.
Oscar, just a second.
We want to invite him to our next meeting.
Do we want to invite him? I think that's a good way to go. Yeah, David, could you do that?
Of course.
Because I'd be very supportive of it.
So do you want me to invite him as the Destinations representative or to discuss it?
Well, I'd like him to make a
Pitch.
pitch.
Yeah, like he did, that'd be great.
Okay.
This is a new position. We've never had a Destinations rep, have we?
No.
Not that I know.
Yeah, so I think it's appropriate. to come in.
Kim is kind of a destination.
Yeah. That's me.
I've recently had some experiences with Destinations, and there's so many layers. It's
Yeah.
more than what maybe a lot of us know. And so pretty important program with some really neat staff and people over there. And I would be excited to hear what Cody has to say.
Yeah. So if you could invite him and put him on the next agenda, that'd be great.
Do that.
Okay. Becky, you're up.
Hello. It's nice to see you all. I had conflicts, the last couple meetings and, thankfully I have a counterpart now that, shares the duties. So I was able to delegate, but really nice to see you all.
Good too.
Good to see you, yeah.
Let's see. Gonna start with a member spotlight for,
I just gotta get you going here. Give me one second.
okay, just the big middle button.
Yep, but I gotta get it.
Oh, okay.
Let me pull up here.
Very timely member spotlight, this based on, last week's events. We had, Jonathan Hill, a science teacher at Marshfield, nominated by one of his coworkers. So first I'm just gonna read what it says. Jonathan Hill, a Marshfield science teacher was nominated by a coworker. Mr. Hill teaches a disaster science class that educates students about the science surrounding natural and human-made disasters. This class empowers students through education to move from victims in a natural disaster to well-informed, prepared, and responsive community assistance and leaders in times of crisis. John also helps run the Community Emergency Response Team, which I think we call CERT, after school, and leads the quick and emergency response drills that are practiced at Marshall High School. So I know I can't forget the fact that Linda also was a big part of the work. When she was, before she retired, she did a lot of the work with Jonathan Hill, but he is our sole member on that team now. So I don't think it's probably not a coincidence that he was nominated this month. Because I think, last week taught us some things. I'm not sure where we thought we were before. I know that we learned that as prepared as we thought we could be, we learned some things. And I look forward to a meeting with Dr. Ainsworth on Thursday. We have a meeting already to problem solve and discuss what we saw and what we could do better next time. So thank you to Mr. Hill for his expertise. I'll be reaching out to him for his input as well. I almost told you to push the button.
Point towards me.
Towards you.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense. Okay. No, is it the middle, the big middle button?
It should be, yeah. Well, let's see.
Okay.
I'll give you a hand.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
As CDEA, we have a big goal for this month, as we are heading into the new year and looking forward to bargaining with you all. We set a goal to meet our members face-to-face this month, at least 90% of our members in a face-to-face interview. So our building reps, our CDEA officers, and our negotiations committee members are working together to conduct these interviews. Our intent is to start gathering input to guide us in bargaining a new contract. And so we have four very open-ended questions that we're asking of our members, and they are simply, how can in regard to a new contract, how can our contract better support you? What do you need to change? What do you want or hope for? And what can you not live without? We'll see what we come up with. But definitely first stage as we head into this critical time of looking at how we can make a better contract. We did put in our demand to bargain in November. And last I heard, we were looking at mid-January for a start date. So looking forward to hearing more on that. Upcoming committee work. There's the new year is coming quickly. I can't even believe that we're already there. That I'm going to tell you Happy New Year before I leave tonight, because it just seems it's going so fast. We have a lot of committee work coming up, really important committee work. Some that's been kind of pushed aside for a little bit, and so we have a lot of work to do. Most notably, I would say the Professional Development Committee, and I know Addie, I've heard you're going to be our board member on that committee, so look forward to working with you on that. We divided that committee into K6 and 7-12. So we've had initial meetings, both sets have had initial meetings just to kind of discuss where we've been and where we want to go. And after the calendar committee meets in January, I believe, we're going to look at getting back together as a professional development committee. Really looking forward to getting some input from our members on what changes we'd like to see in professional development. But the truth is, professional development time has been eaten up by curriculum adoptions in the last few years. Hopefully we're going to look at it as professional development in adoption years and professional development in non-adoption years. Again, calendar committee coming up, evaluation committee I know is meeting again. Michelle Barton is calling them back together. And then in our behind the scenes group, we're working on our bylaws, updating our bylaws. And of course, our negotiations and bargaining committee is starting to meet, as well as the organizing committee that will support us with food and bringing members to bargaining meetings. Wanted to mention just a couple more things that I didn't get in my slideshow. Got some great news from Sunset. They're reporting some really positive things, and I didn't really want to steal it because it felt like it belongs in the principal's presentation, but they sent it my way, so I'm just gonna briefly mention they're really excited about some grants they received from the Coos Bay Schools Community Foundation. I think I said it right. Most notably, there was one that's gonna help Christopher Lyons start an after-school program. So they're really excited about that, as well as some field trips and some books. And then I also got mention of a new self-manager program at Sunset, which is really positive. So they're trying to reward and highlight kids that are doing great things there, and they've gotten started with that. And so looking forward to hearing more about that in the future. And then last, Addie mentioned flu clinics, and I don't think we reported on it last month. And I think our final numbers, we had right about 200. I know I was interviewed recently, and there's going to be an article highlighting the flu clinics in the World newspaper later this week. And so, and I think it's right about 200 flu shots. So maybe see where. So.
Does anybody have any questions?
I don't have any question. I just have a statement. I'm so happy that you're here, Becky. I think you are wonderful, and I'm just happy to see your face.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I was wondering, do you know if Sunset, if they're gonna give me the self-manager button? Because I remember getting a button. Is it
Well,
important?
I
Not
think so.
always, not recess. I mean,
I do think so, because it says something about a badge. being
It's
taken away.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then if
Yeah,
you lose
they
it.
don't do it.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
remember that from your
Yeah.
school days?
Yeah, it's important. Yeah.
I remember.
I did. We have to work really hard for it, being really responsible, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go to Charleston School.
Nobody took it away.
Oh, well,
Before I lose my opportunity, I do want to say happy holidays, happy new year. Stay well. There's a lot of illnesses. Out of 24 students, I had 8 gone today.
Yeah.
Oh,
Something.
Take your vitamins. And
so you stay well too.
well, that's a little late, but, but thank you. I have fever right now.
Okay, Reed. Ms. Landrum, you're up.
Hold on, okay, Brinley. Good evening. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
I apologize in advance. I do not have a staff spotlight or a slideshow ready for you guys this evening because life, and it's been a little busy this last week. But I also wanted to just kind of call attention to all classified staff. Last week, I saw so many of them jumping in and helping out with teachers, classrooms, organizing directions, and just kind of managing whatever was thrown their way during our unexpected tsunami drill that we ended up having. And so I just wanted to recognize all of our classified staff members for that. Also, we are in the same position as the certified staff with negotiation this year. So we did submit our demand to bargain beginning in January. And we have not set a date of when we will be starting that, but we do have our monthly meeting with our superintendent and HR tomorrow. And so I look forward to kind of looking at the schedule and getting that on the calendar for everybody. And other than that, I'm sure I will remember something else I wanted to say once I get off of the call, but did anybody have any questions?
Anybody have any questions for Bree?
No, thanks, Bree.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Have nice holidays.
You too.
Okay. We're moving along really well today. We're at the superintendent's update.
No, oh, yes. Sorry. Never mind. I'm used to you skipping stuff. This time. My time is next. Yes. What's the point? I wasn't on the superintendent. Let's see here. That's the one.
We were moving it pretty good right there.
Yeah, we're moving right along.
So I have to say, initially before, the tsunami and the evacuation practice that we had, I was gonna go into some detail about the district office move. But if I can hold off on that to the next board meeting, just because my side of the agenda was getting pretty packed. So, I will mention at the end. So we'll start off with our mission statement and our mantra.
Swear word to her. Now, to me.
Superintendent goals. And then the agenda for tonight, goals, tsunami. Just I want to give you guys a little bit of background, context, glows and grows, timeline on what occurred, our action steps, what will lot of positives, to be honest, came out of this. And Becky mentioned them and Bree mentioned them. And I would say the positives were our staff, our teachers, our principals, our assistant principals, our support staff, transportation, nutrition services, district office, board members. Kevin was at Marshfield High School helping out, community members. In general, just the responsiveness of our team and our staff for kids and to be flexible was outstanding. Lots of positive feedback in terms of just digging in and helping, and we're concerned about kids and each other. The grow will come more on some of our coordination and logistics and being really clear about roles, right? But as I talked to all of our admin team last week, it was a great opportunity because sometimes you got to go do it to know where the pinch points are, right? And so there's some things that came out of it where we know we've got to be better and a little more clear on roles and responsibilities. AP seminar, I need to briefly talk about because we will be getting to action or non-action action here. Board meetings. I want to talk about our sprint goals before December and then wrap things up. Okay, there's a lot of information on this slide. I will put this in the board post on Friday. And then we're hoping next board meeting, you guys have computers so you can see this with a little more clarity. Again, there's lots of information. I think some of the things that I would like to pull out or emphasize, when the tsunami hit Eureka, I was actually close to Sisters. So I was traveling to Prineville to watch my two kids play. So if you guys ever have traveled to Prineville, you're in and out of pocket, right?
Yeah.
So quick story, Greg Mulkey calls me. I finally got in service. He goes, "Hey, I'm sorry about calling. I'm sure your phone's blowing up, but I gotta let you know something." I said, I don't know anything at this point. He goes, "Oh, there was a big earthquake just at Eureka. There's a tsunami alert." So at that point, I was in pocket, told my wife we're gonna have to stop for a little while because we're gonna have to get involved. So that happened. So immediately we start, I'm interfacing with lots of different people and groups. And one of that groups was superintendents up and down the Oregon coast. They were in the loop before myself, and they had started to evacuate schools. And then we received the alert to get to high ground. So based on the information we had at that point, we had decided to evacuate Madison and Sunset. And actually, Madison had already started to evacuate before I got involved, and they started to go to the top of Prefontaine Hill, right? Yep. The reality is, our schools could have just stayed at Madison and Sunset, but at that point, we're going on best information, and variables I have are superintendents evacuating. So I'm doing the math on it, going, well, I don't want to be the only superintendent to evacuate if it hits. And the text said to evacuate to higher ground, right?
Mhm.
So at that point with parents, and this is not judgment, it becomes emotional.
Mhm.
Parents want their children. So now we're starting to talk about evacuations and pickup processes and where do kids go. So the communication thread starts to happen we create a group with administrators so we can get on the same page, start to assign responsibilities and make some decisions. Obviously, I'm working closely with David because we're starting to craft messages to keep people in the loop. We had sent Madison and Sunset to Marshfield. In retrospect, I wouldn't have done that again. One of my favorite words is ownership. I would have sent them to Prefontaine Hill and then kept them there. And then transportation, we could have coordinated it from there. One of the best things we found out, this is why this is an opportunity to get better. Marshfield cannot facilitate the volume of people that we're asking into the traffic. There's too many pinch points and constraints. I don't know if we would have known that if we didn't have this exercise. So from a macro perspective, not just Madison and Sunset, I think as a city and a district, we have to rethink Marshfield being the centralized location. But I am not a geologist or a scientist, so a lot of smart person in the room, smart people need to get together and unpack that, right? But I have some reservations about Marshfield being the spot for everybody. And then as we went through that, we immediately started, I call them after action reviews. Well, they're not, it's a military term, but it's really, really important after a big event to get people together and talk about what happened. We call it glows and grows. So the next morning we met for an hour and change with assistant principals and principals. We debriefed. We have a list of glows and grows. David's going to put that in the board post. They met the next morning at the secondary level. They met with, they wanted student feedback, which is awesome because they lived it as well. So they've gone through a process at the secondary level of getting feedback from students. I'm looking forward to getting the Google results. And then our principals went through a process of meeting with their staffs on Friday and getting glows and grows. This week, it's just after action reviews. I mean, with Bree and Loma, going to meet with Becky and Anthony, and then Jonathan and Linda. Also going to meet again with principals on Wednesday and assistant principals so we can get the feedback from the staff. And we've already kind of started, what are our next steps? What do we need to do? What do we need to refine? So that's the timeline. Our action steps. We were already in the process, if you can turn that, oh, there we go, it's working. We were already in the process of updating our emergency plans. But if you've ever been a part of a EOP, they don't get updated overnight. They take a little while, right? But there's some things that we can do, I think, in the next week or two to make sure we're more prepared. As always, and Becky talked about this, just increase staff training, more PD, right? This came out, this was important. We have to continue to reinforce the importance of Parent Square to parents. Some of our parents, I think it was a small population, about 10%, they didn't download Parent Square. Hence, they didn't know what was going on, right? And Parent Square isn't just about daily minutia. It's also for these big events where there's emergencies. Assign roles, enhance resources. We don't have enough vests, flashlights, and signage at our schools right now in an emergency. So we've got to dedicate some resources to some of those resources. We need to revisit reunification points. There's on campus and there's off campus. So we've got to get better. We've got to find out where those spots are at, staging areas. And then this is a bigger conversation. Obviously this will be a budget item. I will have to make a decision. I really think we need a safety person in the district. It's too important. Right now, we don't have a dedicated safety person. And a dedicated safety person spends 80% of their job on prevention, right? And they interface with the fire department, Coos Bay Police Department, the Coast Guard, the state level. They're in those conversations and we're constantly refining our practices. They're looking for holes kind of in our game, in our zone. We are very lean, very, very lean. And our district office team wears lots of hats. And I don't think the safety person should juggle 10 other assignments. It's too important. So, yes.
One thing I'd also like you to consider, I just don't think we have a very good relationship with our town. I don't think the town approaches us, the city, when they're going to build 400 houses and say, how is that going to affect the school?
Yeah.
You know, what should we be planning for? So I would like to see us interact a whole lot more with the town. And I was going to go talk to Mayor Benetti and see if we could work on something.
Yeah,
But I think something like this is a really good way that we can segue into having some conversations about commonalities between us and what needs to happen.
absolutely. Yeah, my thought process has been in the next week or so, I want to do lots of internal stakeholder review and collaboration, and then I want to expand it to external. So the fire department, police department.
So I was just gonna talk about, since Marshfield is the evacuation route, I mean, you see it in the city, so that would be a city, conversation, but aren't all of the containers up there filled with water and
Just
food?
their containers.
Yeah, for the emergency,
Yes,
for the
Mhm.
community.
That
not
is
just
true.
For the
Oh,
students.
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Marshfield. They got them right there behind the school. And then I also wanted, Kevin, were you just hanging out at the high school and you were just like there, ready to
He
go?
probably evacuated there because he lived right down.
Yeah, and well, my kids go to school there, so I just
Okay.
spent the whole day and afternoon.
All right. I
and,
was just like, what are you just hanging out at the high school?
Well, they needed
You're
help.
Like, wow.
There's always something to do, so.
Well, and see, you took the opposite. I thought, I'm just gonna be in the way. I thought, oh,
No, there's always somewhere to help.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're good.
Yeah.
Oh,
I have a question about it too.
Yeah, push your car up the hill.
I think too, is there any discussion about, because there was, I believe, a message out that you could like pick up your kid or not pick up your kid, and was that before evacuation? Or after you guys knew that things were clear? Because I think if we communicate with parents what exactly is expected in an emergency, then we're already congesting traffic. And if that was a true tsunami, so who's staying back with those particular kids, that who's getting picked up, not getting picked up? So I'm sure that's something maybe that you guys are looking at, but for me, like in a true emergency, you get those kids and you get out, and then you find parents later when,
That's what they did.
Yeah.
They
did.
evacuated before they had parents coming.
Right.
oh,
Parents were
okay,
coming to
I
Marshfield.
heard something,
Parents were coming to Marshfield.
I heard something different, so thank you for clarifying, because
I
I
think
had
some, I think
heard
some
that there
parents
was.
were trying to
Okay.
proactively go get their kid from wherever they're.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was told that that text message went that said you can pick up your kid as that evacuation was happening, so I was confused if that happened.
I did not see
prior.
that, but
It-
I
it
swear it
did.
doesn't
No.
work for everybody. I've worked.
Well, mine gets at Marshfield, so I didn't get the Sunset Madison, communication, but anyways,
I got all of those. 'cause
Yeah, I got all of
on
them.
Everybody's group, so I got a gajillion messages.
Yeah, I had to
from
text
where-
David.
The only one that
What's
was
happening?
confusing was the last one, basically after the all clears, the kids were being bused back. It was like there's going towards this original plan, or the kids are getting bused back, or you can pick up your kids. And I had to read through that one a few times to figure out.
okay, so it was after the clear,
Yeah.
okay, that
Well,
makes me feel better.
I did see that
Okay.
afterwards.
so what, and we could spend a lot of time on this,
If we don't
right?
have
There's
to,
lots of
yes.
details.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
There were parents coming to the schools to pick up their kids regardless of what we said.
That's
They
right.
were showing up to pick up their kids. We couldn't
Mhm.
tell them to show up to schools. So that's where our staffs really went into action
Yeah,
and coordinated that, because we didn't ask them to come to the schools. They were
Okay,
showing
you
up in
didn't.
droves.
Oh.
Yeah.
No,
Once-
they got a million different emails from the town, and the sheriff
Town
is
aid.
calling you and everything, and you answer that and you get nervous
Yeah.
about your kid, and they just wanted to get their
Yeah.
kids.
100%.
yeah.
And then the dynamics with the kids who had been sent to Marshfield, some parents couldn't get their kids.
Mhm.
So we had to get them back, right? So there was a group that had gone to Marshfield to pick them up, and there was a group that was gonna be there, and we needed to get them back to the school, honestly, to finish off the day, because that's the
Mhm.
safest spot.
Yeah.
And then the buses took them home.
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying, because there's definitely some misinformation
Yeah.
out there.
When all the
And,
parents showed up, they had clipboards and took the kid's name, parents' name, and wrote them down, and they batted the signs.
I just thought.
As they were picking up,
happening.
it was quick.
Yeah, I would think if, as a parent, I'm like, evacuate, do what's safe for my kid, and I'll hook up with you later, but yes,
The,
I get it.
Madison's always gone to Radar Hill to evacuate, and I surprised when I found the buses were going. Up on top of Radar Hill used to be the Elks building.
Right.
It's now owned by the tribe.
Yes.
I know they have emergency stuff up there too. We should coordinate whenever you're safe with the tribe, because they have buildings and stuff. It would be a nice place.
Well, they have a big parking area
And a big
too,
park.
where everyone could go park up
Right.
there.
Yeah, that'll be part of my conversation with Bree
That's at the
to
top.
make
of
sure
the
that
hill.
that's, yeah, solidified as a plan.
Were you gonna say something about the tsunami map?
Oh, yeah, if you could go back. We will share this again with our staffs and our parents, just so that information is out there. The reality is most of our schools are not in the tsunami zone.
Right.
It'd have to be catastrophic,
Yeah.
right? But again,
Yeah.
it becomes emotional when you
Mhm.
hear go to high ground, when
Yeah.
other people are evacuating. The reality is our kids are probably in the safest
Yes.
spot.
Yeah.
This building is,
Yeah.
is not in a good spot,
No.
and facilities is not in a good
Yeah.
spot. Everything else is relatively safe.
So this shouldn't be our meetup place.
Right? Probably not. Yeah,
I would have just read, no.
Yeah.
other area.
I mean, I know it's not our emotional, but most people in most areas should, if they can, and they're not, should stay put.
yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Unless they're on that,
Yeah.
yeah. on
Right
that-
there.
Otherwise, we're just creating problems for.
Because there's
emergency
more
vehicles.
people on the street, that's right.
The hard thing about that part of town is visually,
Yeah.
when you hear tsunami,
You can see
you
it there.
think it's right there on the bay, right?
Mhm.
So,
I will say, having spent a lot of time when I was in the legislature on tsunami stuff. When I first heard about the earthquake, I realized, I told my wife that there's no tsunami. And she said, no, they just said have a tsunami alert. And I said, it depends on the kind of earthquake. And the
Yeah.
ones that happen on these plates that are out there is a rumbling one. It's not an up and down one. And it's the up and down ones that cause tsunamis. So
That's right.
I said, but you can't take a chance because you can't know that.
Until
Until
afterwards.
after the tsunami's already hit.
Yeah.
So
you
they
don't
have to,
know
they have
yet.
to respond, you have to respond, but you have to respond rationally. And I thought our district did a really good job of that, not getting too hyped up and all that kind of stuff. Individual parents, of course they are, because my kids were there, I would have been pretty hyped up. So,
Yeah.
Sure.
but as a school district, I was really pleased that it kind of seemed to be very calm with respect to what they were doing. So I was impressed, actually.
I thought Marshfield killed it. Marshfield, they seem so, I don't know, it seemed very organized.
They
The
did a
kids
great
were lined up, people had signs, like, I was like, oh, they know what's up. They're doing their thing, yeah,
They did a great-
they did.
But
So this
they-
is just to
They
share,
hope to not have to do it again.
yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you.
So these are things you learn. And some of the things that we're gonna look at are things that I'm stealing from my old district. And then this is from Lincoln County up the coast. They're really clear about staging areas,
Yep.
where parents go, where the family waiting area is, where the student supervision area is, and then they have runners that go between. Some of these things happen. I don't want to say organically. I think there were some people who had already knew this structure. But I want to make sure that all of our schools understand we need to have these staging areas in case we have to evacuate.
Lincoln Schools had a really great safety relationship.
Really good.
I mean,
And that's what she does.
She organized the whole county, so.
She organized, and that's what she does.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've already started to, Principal Roberts says, knows some folks in that district. And so
Yeah.
he's helped us with some of those connections. There's a lot of information here, but this is the clarity piece. We're going to work on this as administrators and also get some feedback from both of our unions. But who does what at each school? And you really have to do this every year because positions and names change. All right, so you have to get really clear about who's making the phone calls, who is checking out kids, transportation, nutrition services, who interfaces with me directly, probably the principal, who's doing emergency services, right?
Mhm.
And it really needs to be on one piece of paper. so you can execute and deploy. So we'll go through this process. This came from Lincoln City Family Reunification Card. So if I'm a parent, I fill that out. And if Becky was, let's say Becky was at Melacoma and she was a runner, I would give that to Becky. Becky would run to a teacher who had kids in line. So we'd have some quality control that we're checking out the right kids and then we're checking it off, right? You have a process. This is the piece for the staff. So just little systems and processes that we can add to get better at these kinds of things. Right? This is
The other thing that the safety gal up at thing I say said in a meeting I was with her. You can do all the planning you want. It's very important. You got to do it. You got to make sure everybody understands it. But you don't assume the person who is going to do the job that you've asked them to do will do it. Because during an emergency, people react differently. Some people react really badly. And she said, so you really have to be prepared for however that goes. And that's why all the planning is really important. But you don't give an important job to one person and she's the only one that knows it. You got to make sure that
you got to have redundancy.
yeah.
And personalities
Some
matter.
people, it really does matter. And it was just, every once in a while, it's the high school kid that is the one that handles the emergency best.
Well, Eli had some great stories about kids stepping up and
Yep.
being leaders.
Yep.
Really great. If you get a chance, talk to them. Some kids at Marshall did a great job.
What is Alice over there on the right?
That's our active shooter protocols.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's right. Something that we have to practice.
Thought it was
So who's and we're actually pretty solid in that area
Yeah.
in terms of training. That's one of our strengths. So yeah, just all the things that have to be practiced. And yeah, no plan survives first contact, right?
That's right.
Perfect
Yeah,
be
that's
the
right.
enemy of good, and
Yeah.
you do need to have the right people in the right spots, because I don't know if it's personality, biological hardwiring, but some people are more composed in those situations. Okay, I'll be quick here because we've talked about this, but it will go to a vote. AP seminar as a graduation requirement. I had mentioned that to be eligible for an AP certificate, you needed to take AP seminar and AP research. We have a demographic of kids that's important to and should have the chance to earn those accolades. AP capstone diploma is those things plus 4 AP exams, qualifying scores.
I think the important thing for a lot of people, you don't have to have a 3 to graduate.
No,
I mean, it's not, when you look at that, you're getting a capstone, you're getting a seminar, but if we're making it a requirement for graduation, you have to recognize that there are people who aren't going to get a 3 or a 2. I mean, they're going to get a 1 or a 2.
Yeah.
And they're still going to graduate because they did the class. But
yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, this is really the benefits, right? These are the things that we're trying to make sure all of our kiddos have access to, right? Research and writing, analyzing sources. I'm taking a position on a topic and I'm supporting that position with evidence, right? Doesn't matter what my position is, as long as I have evidence and I've done the research. I'm looking at things from multiple perspectives, not just one perspective. We could take the tsunami evacuation.
Yeah.
Think about that. You could, an education perspective, a parent perspective, law enforcement, fire, the state of Oregon, scientific perspective. But there's so many different angles and lenses you could have looked at that event. That's really important for our students to learn to think globally, macro, and see that things aren't just from one perspective or one lens. Teamwork is part of AP seminar. I'm going to work in a team. We're going to work together. We're going to take a position. We're going to present. Right? These are all professional skills and life skills they'll need. I'll go ahead.
do we know what? We're not going to add more graduation requirements, right?
No, this
So it's
is,
going to replace something.
it's gonna, yeah, so that's the next slide. Yeah, so guidelines, we have 4 required language arts. Required 4. So the thought process is English 1, English 2, AP seminar, and then they have a language arts elective. So it's not adding anything. It's not adding a graduation requirement. My recommendation will be it's the sophomore year, but it could be before, it could be after, just in generally. in general. There are modified or extended diploma kids. We will have flexibility for those kids. Of course, if they want to take it, they can take it. And then students who transfer to us late, say it's a kid in the military, Coast Guard, we're not going to change the rules of the game on those kids. And then other caveats and exceptions, foster kids, kids experiencing homelessness, runaway students, any students in crisis or triage or need support, we're always going to work with those kids and those families, right? I'm talking about 80% of the kids, right? There's always exceptions. Any questions on AP seminar before going to the last topic? Okay, December sprint goals. So this is the data piece of my presentation. One of the things that I like to do throughout the year is to create very short cycle focused team goals. And so we are going into December, and for our elementary, they are focusing on math and attendance. So that started December 2nd. We've been working as an admin group. We baselined the data. We talked about strategies. Principals went back to their teams, and they're focusing on those two things at the elementary level for the next 3 weeks, right before Christmas break. So they're trying to get kids their Success Maker math minutes, right? That's the adaptive math program, and we're trying to increase attendance. I won't belabor that. You guys all know why attendance is important. And we've been progress monitoring that every day. Our secondary sprint goals are our F rate and attendance. And our teams are working really hard to get kids to school and reduce the F rate at the secondary level. We have team captains. So every school has a group of captains. And we have division of labor. If Mr. Roblin and myself are at Marshwood High School and he's the principal, he's got the F rate and I've got the attendance rate as the assistant principal. And we've got our own teams, right? And we're working on improving student outcomes and results for kids. Here's an example, Eastside Elementary. This is what they did last Friday. So they looked at math. This was 1 grade level. So they've already started a progress monitor. So 63 students in that grade level met the sprint goal, which is 60 minutes of math and Success Maker a week. And then they went further. 80% of those kids were 80% or better, right? So they weren't getting 60 minutes, they were getting 90 minutes, 80 minutes. 13 students were within 10. So they were getting 50, and then 24 students were less than 50. So that's the level of detail. They're disaggregating and they're identifying those kids. That's 1 grade level at Eastside. This is Little Pirates, and they're looking at their attendance data. They don't use Success Maker at Little Pirates. They're sharp, but they're not quite ready for that. This is an example of, I gotta go back. Eastside Elementary, again with math, they were able to break down their data, and you can see, is that 28% in green? I can't read that from 26. 26% of their kids are growing more than 3 years worth of growth. So they're accelerating. 6% are on pace and 49% are behind. We're still trying to catch up through COVID. There's Little Pirates. And then I like to wrap up with the calendar. We mentioned we have a meeting, we have our OSCA meeting this week. We have an admin meeting on the 11th. We have a superintendent's meeting on the 12th. We have a CBA meeting on the 12th. If you get an opportunity this Friday, they're having the Economic Outlook Forum. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. You guys are invited. They have economists from the state coming down. The topic is housing. It's the housing.
It's early in the morning.
Where is that?
It starts early, but it goes to the mill. The
It's over
mill
by
is
now,
But
yeah.
I mean, what day?
Friday.
Friday.
Friday. Yeah,
Starts like at 7 in the morning. Something like that.
yeah. But the main topic is housing,
Mm.
and the economist from the state is going to come in and talk about economic projections here. I think he's going to talk about the potential of the port project.
Yep.
And that impact and those factors should be interesting. I'm not trying, I can't make it all day, but I'm going to try and get over there for a couple hours. Elijah mentioned the Les Schwab basketball tournament next week. They'll be here for 3 days. Another great opportunity in our community where lots of people come in. I think there's I've never quantified it. I don't know if I've heard, but there's got to be an economic impact of that many teams and people showing up for basketball.
They figured it out.
Do they have some numbers?
Yeah. Numbers.
Yeah. And then the last thing is the district office move. Again, this was going to be on the agenda, but we need to dedicate some time to the evacuation. I am leaning as the superintendent to bringing us down here,
Yes.
but there's some budget items that are unknown. To do that it's expensive, right? So we really need to nail down some numbers to make that happen. My logic train says we need space for kids. And we need to grow destinations. We need to grow Little Pirates. There's other alternative programs we need to look at, but we don't have space. And I'd rather have adults down here than kids, I think for obvious reasons. So I think where I'm leaning right now, and then once I have a firm number, I can start to map that out over the next year or two. So I'm hoping to do that our next board meeting.
So the form costs money, yeah, and you have to register. For
The form?
The economic,
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's not.
you do have to register. And,
We'll take care of it. So just
okay,
let us know. Yeah.
Just call David.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, you guys tell David can just sign, yeah, but if you have time, I think it would be important.
it's really good. I've done most of them, the last number of years.
Some too.
And it's funny, actually.
It's funny, like a comedian.
The account that comes in is hilarious, and he does a great job. So,
Oh, good. He
which
keeps
is
you
kind of fun.
engaged.
He keeps you engaged. He's really good. If it's the same guy, and it has been for everyone before.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fun.
My launch, good things. Elijah mentioned some of these items, these topics. The Haunting of Will Shakespeare. You get a chance at Marshfield High School, go watch our drama kids. We have these 4 Millicoma students talking about math. These students demonstrated the most math growth last month. So it's awesome that staff, they're recognizing academic achievement and not just proficiency, but growth, right? Which is really important. We have 2 of our own volleyball players. I happen to be related to one is my niece. They were state players of the co-players of the year in volleyball. That's awesome. Tatum Montiel and Ava Ainsworth. We have our robotics group finished first. Elijah mentioned this in Roseburg. So that's a big deal. Lots of firsts around here the last month.
Yeah.
The land of Coos Bay. These guys, and I don't know how many people are on the robotics team, but we talk about STEM a lot. STEM is the fastest growing career field in the country.
I was gonna say, I think they've got about 6 people on that team and there's a couple who are pending.
Yeah, so, I mean, we'd love to hire these folks. Is IT people, and I mean, that computer science, IT, they'll have lots of job opportunities if they stay with it. Our speech and debate team, we have our former coach over here, Coach Crook, who established the program, state championship level program. I think Elijah said 1st, 2nd, and 3rd at St. Mary's. So this is a program that is dominating. And this is the last thing I want to say. These kids are doing AP seminar.
Yeah.
This is AP seminar. These kids are taking a position, they're researching, they're writing, and they're presenting, and they're doing it in teams. So I want to take those skills of speech and debate, and I want to extend them to all kids. All kids need to learn speech and debate and this life skill. So I think that is the end for my presentation.
All right. I have a question for you. I saw in the Marshfield announcements today, about, kids being able to sign up for different clubs. Was it Mondays and Wednesdays, including buses to go home? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, I know that Marshfield, I think, does a great job with clubs. I mean, and this is one of Eli's strengths. He's always looking for things that kids can connect to. The archery club is his brainchild. He has been working on trying to get transportation to take kids home, because one of our constraints with any club or after school activity is how do you get kids home? Right? And so we were able to secure some, I don't know exactly how many days and what days it is, but some funding for those kids to get back to their house to remove that barrier. I wish we could do that for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. It was a surprise. It looked like something that was pretty awesome.
And some of that is we're doing after school tutoring for math. So we have a couple of math teachers who are staying afterwards to get kids math support. And then if they don't have a ride, we can get them home.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Is that it, Justin?
That's it. Yep, thank you. Thank you,
Do you have
Marina.
any other questions? Okay, let's move along. Marina,
Hello, how are you?
okay, I said I wanted you to show your baby.
Oh, yeah, and then he started screaming, so I gave him back to his dad, and he's in the living room as far away from me as possible. Otherwise, it would not be pleasant. But he's cute, and he's 5 weeks old tomorrow, so we're
And
good.
what's his name?
Theodore.
Theodore.
He
Well, I
goes
have a
to
link
wedding.
in Jackson, so we
Oh,
get a present.
Mhm. We're keeping it all consistent. So I think I'm able to share my screen. Is that right, David?
Yes,
Perfect. I've never done this before, so I'm sorry if I.
it's the little box with the arrow. Oh, you got it.
You got it.
Look at me go. Okay. Can you see if I'm, oh, good. Okay. I can see a little screen. So, general fund, we are looking great. We are on track, even with our new projections that we've built. Obviously, last year's budget data wasn't great, but we've kept with pretty consistent trends, and we are on track for all spending as we had anticipated during the budget season. You will see that we are still using our budgeted beginning fund balance of 5 million as the annual forecast. We do that is higher. It is a slight amount higher. I think it's 5.3 million in actuality. As we're finishing the audit, I wanted to make sure that we use budget numbers until I have an official number for you to match the audit report, which you guys should get, I would imagine, very soon, and hoping for a February or a January audit presentation. I'm not sure when our new auditors plan to come into Oregon. They don't live here, and so we're kind of working with their schedule. But my hope is that the January board meeting, you'll see the audit report. We're on track for all functions in the general fund. We are getting pretty close to a projection of our annual forecast. You'll see in instruction, we're expecting to spend about 530,000 within our budgeted numbers. As we get closer to the end of the year, if these start to look like they might trend over, we'll do a rebudget allocation. I was pretty conservative in my numbers. I didn't want to allocate too much money in any one function. So if we do need to reevaluate those later on in the year, we can include that in our supplemental budget. All is looking great for general fund. As we look at the special revenue funds, things are looking great. You'll see local sources is projected to receive a little less income than we anticipated. Those are because of the way the food service funding comes through. We didn't get October's claim for food service until December and November. So we're just a month behind in those claims. So it's looking like we won't on this. It's thinking we won't receive that month of claims, but we've just gotten 2 months in this last week. So we'll see that come through. You'll see under federal sources, it's projecting that we will receive significantly more money than we budgeted for. That is because of the way SIA has adjusted their systems and some of our other grants. What we had previously used as carryover and then continued to carry over a chunk of the grant allocation each year, we can no longer do that. The state and the federal government are requiring that we spend the current year allocations within the current year. So we will have to do a supplemental budget this year because we will be spending significantly more than we would expect typically, because we typically carry over SIA and ESSER dollars past June 30th, and we can no longer do that. So we have to spend a whole year allocation plus last year's carryover for almost all of our grants in this current fiscal year. So you'll see even under expenditures on each function, we're anticipating being over our allocations. That's because we are having to spend over our budgeted allocations in order to spend all of our grant dollars. So probably February and March, when all of those grant agreements are finalized, we'll be doing a supplemental budget to allow us to spend all of last year's carryover and the current year allocation in this current fiscal year. And then moving forward, we will be budgeting just the projected allocation for each year, and we will be expending to the dollar each allocation by June 30th. Unfortunately, that's a change. We've tried statewide to get that changed, but there is no way to do that. And so July through September is now going to look a little different in terms of our funding sources, because we'll no longer have the prior year carryover in terms of grants. So yes, we are projected to spend over our allocations, but we are on top of that, and we'll closely monitor that each month. And then if we need to, even sooner than February, I'll do a supplemental budget to allow us to spend those. Debt service, looking great. We were pretty spot on with our local source projection. That's our property taxes. We received bulk of those. I would say about 80% of our property taxes in November. So we've received most of those. So this annual forecast is pretty spot on. We are on track to spend and receive the appropriate amount of dollars to pay all of our debt services. And then capital projects. This is a interesting fund this year. And this is closely tied to ESSER spending last year. Last year, it looked like we had a pretty significant carryover in ESSER. It turns out that we were just able to reallocate some of our Millicoma expenses from this HVAC project that had been previously coded to capital projects funds. I was able to move all of those, about $2 million, out of the capital projects funds and move it into ESSER so that we could claim that down and spend all of our ESSER funding on the Millicoma HVAC project. What that did is then it freed up about $2 million in capital projects that we had not anticipated having as the beginning fund balance. So as Justin makes some decisions on district office moves, this is potential use of those sources, sunset roof, long range facilities planning, goals that we've set in place. Those are things that we can continue to move forward on, but there is a little more spending that will happen in this fund than I had originally anticipated this year, because we weren't anticipating having all of that funding. So we will also do a supplemental budget for this fund as we decide what projects we're going to do in the second half of the year, so that we can make sure that's all within our current year allocation. But all in all, we are looking great. I'm monitoring this really closely this year, because in the past we've had her name was Linda Darling. She was a Forecast 5 wizard. Essentially, that's the data software that we utilize in order to build these reports. She has retired after about 15 years with our ESD and our information. And as we have a new person at Forecast 5, as I'm in my second year, I want to make sure we're monitoring this really closely. And so some of these things might change. Some of the layouts might change as we get farther in the year and we have more firm data, but I just want to provide this as we get going in this fiscal year. But if you guys have anything on these that you'd like changed, please let me know. I can build a new report. I can include some further information. I typically have all of that information. I get about 18 Excel sheets that look like this, and then I just pull the cleanest for you guys, the cleanest to explain based on our budget process. But if there's anything else you guys would like in more detail, I'm always happy to provide that. We're looking good, and we will continue to monitor that as we get going into this next budget year, as we get going into this new biennium, as we get going into a new budget cycle with 2 negotiations happening with a newer governor. There are a lot of question marks. So this is the firm data I can provide, but next year's budget is going to be a really challenging crystal ball, and we're trying to have as much firm data as we can before we start going into any negotiations or budget planning. Does anyone have any questions on these 4 reports?
Thank you.
Yeah. And then to quickly touch on enrollment, are you guys, hold on, I gotta figure out how to change my screen. Present something else. No. So enrollment, I pulled this last night because I wanted the most accurate data for you guys. As we get going in the year, one day there could be a huge swing. We're down. We're down about 2% from last December. We are down to 3,002 students. Last year we were down to 3,063. So that is a significant decrease. We were anticipating that during our budget cycle, but as we get through the year, we're going to continue to monitor that. We may end up submitting new enrollment data to ODE where they might adjust our state school fund based on our actual numbers rather than what we had projected last December for this year. Because this is lower than we had anticipated, not lower than we budgeted, but lower than anticipated a December ago. The most significant change you'll see is at the high school. We're down 27 students from from November. From November's report, we're down from 817 to 790. Some of these, it does appear one of these went to destinations, but we've also decreased at the AYA level. And so I'm not sure where these kids go. That's something that we're going to continue to monitor and investigate. But we're keeping a close eye on each school's enrollment. The middle schools and the elementary schools, they tend to fluctuate with each other. If Madison goes down, you'll typically see a slight increase at Eastside, but I'm not seeing that with the high school. And so that is something that is on our radar. I did want to point out that if you compare this report to your last month's 11-1 total report, I did change the total. I did change the total down to 3,031. You can see it at the bottom under 11-124. This is because in the past, we have only excluded the pre-K numbers, which is the Little Pirates preschool. However, Lighthouse, they started their own preschool program. And so we are now excluding their 19 preschool students from our numbers. And so we did decrease this from 3,050, I believe is what it said on last month's report, down to 3,031. So if you get to comparing your November and your December reports and you see a discrepancy, that's why we will continue to exclude them moving forward, because they don't actually count towards our ADM and we don't pay state school fund pass through on those students. Does anyone have any questions on enrollment?
Do we know where these high school kids are going? Like 27?
I don't personally. That's something that we're going to investigate. I don't know where those go. It's pretty typical that we lose a chunk of students the first semester of each year, but I don't know where they go. There's lots of suggestions, lots of possibilities. I know that during COVID, we assumed a lot of them became homeschooled, but having that significant of a decrease just at the high school level, my guess is that they're probably going to an alternative education system where they can graduate quicker, or typically they've gone to destinations or AYA, a chunk of them, and we've been able to track them that way. But this one stumps me a little, so we'll look into that.
Yeah, as she was talking, I want to get some data on some longitudinal data. How many we lose last year, the year before, to see if that's high, is that low, is it the average? Destinations, AYA, potentially North Bend, Winter Lakes, and Coquille are probably the 4 options. The ones that you worry about the most are the ones where we don't know where they're right, and so trying to find out where kids are. And that connects to another conversation about alternative education, right? Do we need to have more seats in programs like destinations? Right, you guys have heard me say this. I'm a supporter of comprehensive high schools. However, they don't fit the need for every kid, right? And so we need to make sure we're meeting the needs of kids and families and being resourceful and creative so we're not losing kids.
It also goes back to the conversation we have every budget cycle for the last 4 years, where we discuss that statewide since COVID, we're down approximately 20,000 students in Oregon, that we don't know where they went. That ADM used to include 20 to 30,000 more students than it does now. We have no idea where those kids went statewide. During COVID, a lot of them just left, whether that became homeschool or they just didn't report to a local district. So while we have 29 statewide, we have about 20 to 30,000 that they're trying to track. And it has gotten pretty complicated to do so.
And
So-
sorry, you go ahead, Army.
I was just gonna say, generally speaking, in my history of the school, we lose more high school students after January 1st than we did before. So I worry about what happens
Coming up.
coming up.
I would agree. After first semester is complete, we tend to lose the most.
Yeah.
So I just bring that to everyone's attention.
Maureen, do we track whether or not families are leaving? Like if there's a child in elementary school and in the high school, do we have data on whether or not it's a whole family leaving or just a child?
You know, in the business office, we don't have that data, but we do have Glenna Patnode, who is our student support service secretary. She has a very long title, but she handles all of the IDTs, which are the intra-district transfers. And so as students move to different districts, they have to submit a form to get their file sent over. So she may be compiling data that we could pull for that purpose. She might not be using it for that purpose, but it might be something that we can look at.
Yeah.
And the high school attendance people track that pretty closely.
Mhm.
And I think too, just back to alternative education, I know there was probably like a little bit of a wait at destinations of people wanting to get into destinations. And if we're losing them to Winter Lakes or another online academy or something like that, I think the alternative education is definitely worth taking a look at.
Yeah, we need more seats there. And we also need a program in our system when a kid is suspended long-term, we don't just send them.
Right.
We have somewhere for them to go that maybe is more restrictive, but they're still with us, still connected to an adult, a
Yeah.
teacher, they're receiving food, even though they're on a long-term suspension or expulsion. Sometimes expulsion can be tricky because there's safety issues, but we
Yeah.
currently don't have that. Here's the challenge. I'm going to say this publicly. Nobody's going to give us more money for alternative education.
Yep.
So we're going to have to prioritize and potentially repurpose things to make that happen. Unless
I did,
Governor Kotek can come up. Right.
well, that's interesting. I was in a meeting, yesterday with the new incoming chair of the Senate Education Committee. And, there were a lot of education-related people in the room who were throwing at her lots of ideas. And the two that got the most mention were funding for CTE classes
Yeah,
and alternative education
Nice.
programs.
yeah.
There's,
Post it online.
So they are going to look at those.
Yeah.
there's an article in the Oregonian Sunday, that Barbara Smith Warner and I wrote with some other people, about the Student Success Act and the money that's coming from that. Because there is a conversation at the legislature to not fund that anymore
I know.
and to just use that money to backfill education, which we think is a bad idea. So, because that gives us money for little pirates, it gives us money for a lot of different things. So there's a big push right now by a group of people to make sure they don't play around with that.
Yeah.
Got a person online, Addie.
Can I add a little something into your
Yeah,
comment
Brenda.
there? We actually have an online student that was suspended, long-term expelled, has now been moved to online instead of attending school. So we do kind of have something set up that way.
And that's our online platform.
Yes.
It's through the alternative online.
Yeah,
Thank-
I just wanted to share that little bit of tidbit with you.
thank you.
That's good.
What about partnering with the community college? Do we know what kids might be going over there just to take their GED?
I don't know. I don't track attendance data specifically, but that is something that we can look at.
Can I answer that?
Yes.
Sorry. So previous to, I think, last year, we would actually have to, I would have to sign off on students going to the college to take their GED. The law changed on that, and I no longer do that. Like, they just accept them, but we don't have a relationship right now where SWAT says, hey, these are the kids that are enrolled in our GED program, or whether or not they pass either. So that impacts our graduation rate as well. And so, because we can't say this is where they went, right? It's not a public education, like free information exchange at this point in time. So
Alex said that she would be willing to work on something like that. I know, when we were doing our strategic planning, and then, I know a couple of kids that actually did that are related to ANS.
yeah.
But they did get their GED, so that was good. But
So when the way we find it out is Eli and I pick kids that are listed as dropouts for Tuesday schools, and that's when we usually find out whether or not the student completed that. So.
thank you, Christy.
Are there any other questions for Marina?
Okay, then I'm gonna take off. There's a crying baby and a 2.5-year-old. So I gotta skedaddle. But thank you guys. If you have any other questions, go ahead and email me and I'll be happy to get those over to you.
Okay, if you're not back next month, we want to see the baby.
I will be back next month. And
Okay.
yep, I'll be there.
Put the baby in.
I can still show you the baby next month. Bye guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay, we're on to policy updates. David, can you?
I can. My favorite. Okay. So there were a number of policies. A lot of them are related to change in regulations regarding Title IX, which changed. We had a number of policies that kind of delved into that, and all of those required updates due to that. So most of these policies came at the recommendation of OSBA as required policies. So there's some addition of language around a civil rights coordinator and civil rights as it pertains to Title IX. So we reviewed that at our last policy committee meeting, and Michelle Barton, who is our current Title IX coordinator and will also be the civil rights coordinator, was in attendance at that meeting, so we could make sure we had her input. As normal, everything highlighted in yellow is something that the committee elected to keep or added. Anything in red will be removed. The gray is just what I copy and pasted directly from OSBA. They put their new language in. Let's see. The second policy is the AR associated with that first one. Some new language added. We changed it to, you'll see the yellow / supervisor. That's because a number of our supervisors are not principals. So if we're talking about a, custodian who thinks they've had a Title IX violation, it doesn't make sense for them to go to their principal and not their immediate supervisor. So to add that language in, we added the / supervisor. So that was the rationale behind that. Let's see. And then just some other language changes related to that. Sexual harassment also ties into that Title IX, so that's why this one is on here. We listed Michelle as our Title IX coordinator as normal. Let's see. I know there is one note here that I want to. So the deleted policies, they're not going away, they're just being replaced by, they basically whole cloth rewrote the policy, so it made sense to adopt the new one and delete our old one, and that was what they advised, rather than go try and retrofit all of their changes onto our old policy. So that's why you'll see the deletions for the AR and AR2. We will have JDA AR2 on our next policy update to adopt that replaces this AR2. The reason it wasn't on this is because it's a highly recommended policy, not a required. And as I go through the policy updates, I start with required, get those done first, then we go to highly recommended, and then optional. Pregnant or parenting students. We, well, they added and or parenting students. It gives information about the Title IX coordinator and explaining the rights to a pregnant or parenting student. Then IKF, we've seen this one a few times this year. We had just adopted it in November, at our November board meeting, but we have some more changes to make. So some of these changes came from OSBA's November update. Those are the ones that are in gray. You'll notice on page 60 at the top, the green area, that is Justin's addition about AP seminar that he discussed with you in his presentation earlier. So that's the language reflected in policy there that would explain the exceptions, the requirements, those types of things. So I highlighted that in green so you'd know that's something we added separate from OSBA.
So the changes are primarily around the advanced placement courses.
The changes in green, but there were also changes prompted by OSBA. So
Yeah.
anything that's not highlighted in green, that was prompted by OSBA.
Yeah.
And I swear, Adrian, I changed this biliteracy thing again. And so I would like to make an ad hoc amendment here on page 63. I'm going to take the hyphens out of biliteracy so that they all match. Would everybody be okay with me making that addition?
Where is
So
the,
by adopting this policy, we will have approved going to the,
So this is just first reading, so you,
Right.
but yes, when it's adopted, if it is adopted in January, it will be approving the change to graduation requirements to add AP seminar with the caveats listed here. What else?
I have a question about the flag one when it's for that one.
Yes, that's the next one. Yeah, then there's just I made a minor language change here. They said 2 credits of English, but everywhere else it said language arts, so I changed that to language arts. OSBA did not say to do that, but I thought we should. It's not of substance, it's just linguistic. And then page 71 is policy INDB. This is one. Oh, and I forgot to ask because that was actually first, I think, on the agenda. Was prospective policies for review. As you recall, we had added that section. If a board member has a policy that they would like the policy committee to review, they will bring that up at a public meeting at our regular board meeting, ask the board's approval essentially to add that to the policy committee agenda. And then the policy committee will review that at their next meeting or as soon as it fits on the agenda for the policy committee. And then bring those changes to you here. So that's why I've listed them separately in the packet. And that's how I'll continue to do it is I will say, first readings, OSBA recommended. And then if there's any other first readings that aren't from OSBA, I'll note that. So I noted first readings, board member suggestion. Just because I know you're used to getting the OSBA updates. So I want to make sure that we're clear when an update is pushed to us by OSBA and from other forums as well. So the only change on this policy was the suggestion to change from remove the language at least once a day, at least once each week, and add daily. So that is the only change to IMDb.
I wonder if I could say just two things about one, the AP seminar.
Sure.
I felt so much comfortable after talking about it in the policy committee with the AP seminar. So if anybody has any worries or concerns, because when I think of something, I'm like, oh, we're adding one more thing, we're putting one more thing on these kids to graduate, and then are we challenging them in the right ways? After that conversation and just knowing that there's going to be exemptions, and I just felt so much more
comfortable with it.
yes, and it was such a healthy conversation and be able to talk about it and what that looks like. And so I really appreciated the conversation in the policy committee. That definitely put some comfort for me. And when I think about these kids who are already struggling in school and what that might look like for them, but a lot of kids are already doing Socratic seminars, and so this is to me what it sounds like is that on right like times 10 or something, so yeah. And then
I think that speaks to the advantage of having the policy committee really go into depth in the policies, because you are able to get that information that you may not have had and just seen it in writing. And
yeah, and I think if board members or anybody had questions or needed clarifications, I mean, Justin obviously would be the person to break that down, but it made me feel really good about it. And then, of course, the flag display, it's probably no surprise that I was going to say something here about this one too. And for me on this particular one, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And I thought about this a lot, and for me this could be a very slippery slope for us as a board, because it can come across as potentially something political. And I also feel like as board members, I want to spend my time discussing policies and things that are going to impact education, and they're going to move the needle to higher education rates and the goals that we set forth for Justin and then the district. And those are the policies and the things that I'd like to stay focused on. So that's.
So you would have left it at least once a week?
I would leave it at least the opportunity once a week versus daily. It's not broken. It's not.
I understand.
Yeah. So.
I'll let you guys sacrifice yourselves first. Or not, or whatever. Yeah.
Why did they go to daily?
It's not, but that's.
it's weekly.
But no, so I over the years, as we grew up here in Coos County, it was daily.
Yeah.
And then I asked like Eli, they do it daily during the morning announcements. So I was like, well, we should just update the policy and do it at the same time, because the policy says weekly, so.
So we're taking out the weekly and putting it to daily.
Today
was the suggestion. At least the old language is at least
Yeah.
once per week.
Right. So you want our flood, what is actually happening?
Yeah, in one of the schools.
But once it becomes a policy, then it's,
Then
it
it's
has to,
everywhere, has to
it
happen.
has to happen.
Yeah, so it was made clear to us during our policy committee meeting that, yeah, the high school does this with their daily announcements. In elementary school, they actually have to do some training for the kids for, this is what the Pledge of Allegiance is, this is how you do it, this is how you be respectful. If you're not a US citizen or, you might get an exchange student or something, this is, how you, how you conduct yourselves during the Pledge of Allegiance. And so they do a lot of teaching about that, which apparently takes more often than once a week, particularly in elementary schools. So that's
is
also
sort
something
of
that's going on in the
yeah.
district, yeah.
Are they doing it daily?
Not always. They do it more frequently than once a week, I believe.
So what I hear you saying, Diane, is to keep it at once a week. Those are not the districts, and these, and people can do it.
At
Minimal
least
standard.
once a week.
Having the opportunity, yeah. For me, that's how. I mean, I don't want this to become political, so I'm very,
It
I'm
already
very
is.
reserved. And so
Yeah.
that's why for me, like, this doesn't move the needle. It doesn't give us a higher graduation rate discussing this. It doesn't move, it doesn't do anything for the goals that we have set for. Right, higher attendance, higher graduation, reading, math. This is, for me, feels agenda driven, and we have been so cohesive as a board, and we've done such a good job. I don't want, because if we do pass this, whether we do or not, I do get concerned about the things that are going to come up along the way, which some things have already been mentioned, and it can get very political. And I want to spend my time, and the reason I did this is because I do care about our community. I do care about these kiddos, and I would rather focus my time and my energy on things that are going to move things in the right direction. I agree.
So you're suggesting leave it the way it is?
I am. I don't think it's broken. And if it's already, they have the opportunity, or it happened several times, and the kiddos from elementary are coming up and they know how to say the Pledge of Allegiance, and
Yeah, well, I think it's a public school. Daily is common sense.
Do they have to do it daily?
No, that's like the third paragraph in there. They could not participate.
Then we would have it. Oh.
No, the
oh,
school has to do it every day.
The school has to do it every day. But if we write this, right? If we
Right.
Change it.
I think it's even,
even
the
if-
school has to provide an opportunity every day. So that's fairly vague. Like, I don't know that even means you have to lead them in it. It's if the flag is there and the student is there, I see that as an opportunity.
Well, it gets into a lot of discussion about what it is and what it isn't. I mean, we've had this policy in place for a while. If I were to vote on it, I would say, let's leave it as is.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. I mean,
Does anybody say amen after that? Because I grew up in Texas and it is a religion there. I'm not kidding. We say, I almost say it every time, amen.
Okay, for the record though, I believe it should be every day. And not mandatory for those of you that want to do other things, but.
You would prefer that all children do the Pledge of Allegiance every day.
Yeah, if they, if they're in public school, want to do it, yeah.
Arnie?
I will tell you that as a principal, one of the most contentious things I ever had to deal with was assemblies where kids respectively stood and teachers went berserko because they didn't say the Pledge of Allegiance. And then I had parents in my office and they had religious reasons why they didn't want to say it. And teachers were upset because the kid wasn't doing what he was supposed to do. And it was very frustrating to me. So I tend to be on the side that once a week is enough for everybody to learn it and to understand it. And it becomes more meaningful than if it's every day. I think when you say things over and over again every day, you say it not because you mean it, but because it's something you say every day. And I get a little concerned about that. I would rather people were thoughtful about when they do it. So.
And at the high school level, we do it every day.
We do it. The announcements every day. I mean, my wife was a principal in elementary schools. They did it every day.
Well, they do it every day because my kindergartners, I was like, what? You know that?
You do it every day.
Do you, how about, let's ask our representative over here.
Do it every day.
Millicom does it every day.
Yeah.
Madison, we do it once a week.
Once a week?
Well, he's pretty smart in this stuff. I don't know. He knows it. He mumbles it.
Yeah, it's already common practice anyway.
Yeah, but it's only once a week in the elementary schools. And maybe
That's
that's
not elementary school.
Yeah, but they've got low grades and stuff going on also that we can address.
Yeah, but
All this build on
the kids at Madison, when I went to that veterans thing, they signed the Pledge of Allegiance. I mean, they're learning it even deeper, I think, as you have to learn it in another language also.
Can you just remind me, what is the, we've done the policy reviews differently. What is the, remind me of what our board role is on policies. What are the steps? This is a first reading based on the recommendation of or at least moving forward from the policy committee. Right?
So the whole policy committee recommended this.
No,
It's just moving forward.
This is.
I did not recommend this.
Well, then why is it in here?
No, but what you,
She left and I took a new vote.
so about 50%.
You got the kid at the end, so that could have happened.
Made my vote more, so here we are.
If I, and correct me if I'm wrong, Diane, if I recall from policy committee, what you did support was the board having a discussion based on this.
I mean-
Because you said, I don't.
I'm sure in July we'll have 3 new board members to help throw the vote.
I'm one person, and so there's a lot of feelings and opinions, and there's a lot of smart people sitting at this table, and so absolutely, I think like having an open discussion and getting other people's feelings is important, and so, yes, because I was a little confused too, because I always thought like there was it needed to be 2 people, but that I think would be to have it voted on. So I'm a little confused on that too, but we're not voting on this today.
No, so.
Yeah, okay.
That's for clarification.
Yeah.
No, so, and this is kind of uncharted waters for me in this role as well, as most of our policy updates have come from OSBA. And then we've got suggestions on those policies and what wording we should choose, but that's different than a suggestion not based on that. So I haven't done this before, so my thought would be, unless you wanted to take it to a vote today, is it would go to second reading and adoption at our next board meeting, and you would either vote for or against the change to this.
So the policy committee, I just want to make sure you're saying what, like you weren't joking.
No, I wasn't joking.
Okay, so the policy committee agreed that this is what you guys want to move forward with was daily.
No,
No,
Okay, why
So-
is it here then?
so.
Yeah,
the poli- So Kevin brought this policy
Okay.
to the committee, the suggestion. The policy committee agreed that the board should hear the suggestion. So Diane supported the board as a whole weighing in on this, but did not necessarily support the language, if that
Okay,
makes
so
sense.
this is separate than the policy review of the standard changes that you guys are presenting to us to look at for first reading.
Yes.
This is different. This is just a FYI. This is what you guys are, because you guys are supposed to be figuring that out in policy committee. And then you bring it to us and you say, okay, this is what we recommend. And then we have a discussion on it.
so there's probably some confusion there then,
Might
because
need to be more hashed out at the committee level. And then you guys can come forward and say, hey, this is what we recommend. And we either put it in there or you don't, and we vote on it, and then we discuss like why it should or shouldn't.
Yeah, well, we took a vote when she left.
Can I, David, I think the concern was that there was not agreement amongst the policy committee on this. And the policy committee has no authority to make that vote.
No.
So they needed to bring that suggestion to the whole board.
So we're.
And so
acting as
Diane's
a
part in that is saying, as a policy committee member, I have my feeling about this, but I'm not the full board and I don't have the authority to make a call like that.
But you guys have the
So-
authority to recommend to us. That's what the committee's for. So
So if
we
one,
vote on it.
okay, so if one person on the policy committee feels a certain way, two others don't, and it doesn't ever make it to the board, yet four people at the board would have supported. Do you see what I mean? It's like they're not the full board,
No.
so they
But
can't.
we trust the policy committee as reps. I mean, I was on it for years and we didn't agree on everything.
But if that were the case, then it wouldn't. If they were gonna make the final call on what gets through or not, then it wouldn't come to the board at
It still
all.
would. It still would. Either way, it would come to the board and then during discussion, Kevin would say, they voted to keep it the same, but here's what my thoughts are on this. I would like it daily, or it would come the other way. We all agreed in policy committee to put daily, and Diane would say, I thought that it should stay the same, and here's my reasons why, and then we would deliberate and we vote.
So
But
But it's
normally,
okay. It came here, it's fine.
well, normally though, it's being considered because of changes already. This one had no changes.
Right.
So,
No.
But we've had policies that have had no changes that we've changed before. It's just weird.
Yes, so that's why we added the perspective policy in advance, where the board gets to decide if this even gets brought to discussion at the policy committee, which they did decide we should discuss it. Then this is the result of the discussion. We were never going to come to an agreement
Right.
on what should move forward. So it made sense to bring it back to the board who had first said, yes, I'm okay with you reviewing that. Here's what we reviewed. Here's the one suggestion and then the discussion.
So do we need to vote on it now?
No.
Otherwise if we don't vote no now,
Or yes.
then it goes, or yes, it goes back to the policy committee
And it
and it
has like-
automatically becomes the policy at
No.
our next
If,
meeting.
if we don't take it out at the next
Okay.
meeting.
We can still take it out at the
Correct.
next
Of
meeting.
course. Yeah.
The other thing I would recommend personally, if there's a disagreement of this sort and a discussion is needed, I would put it as a separate agenda item as opposed to a
Yeah.
policy.
So instead of adding the consent agenda as second reading,
it's really not a.
It's not
Second
a policy.
Yeah.
Yeah. As in what, in how we're reading them to, as the board, it's more of a discussion item. So it would be, it would seem,
Which was result in a policy change, but
Yes, it could.
yeah.
well, and I will absolutely do that for second reading. I will not include it in the consent agenda as it seems that it will be an item that you would all like to discuss and vote on separate than the consent agenda.
Right.
And that's what my intention was with separating it here and listing OSBA recommended policies and a board member suggestions. So that was kind of why I added that distinction in the agenda so that you would know those two are separate. It is from policy committee, but
Right.
it is not a OSBA policy update.
I wonder, again, it would be good to maybe clarify with OSBA what they would recommend. Because to me, if I'm a board member and I have a recommendation for the board to consider, I would think that this board meeting might be the best place to have it, not in a policy committee.
yeah.
Because the policy committee, because you're putting something in policy committee that really outside of its scope, which to consider mostly standard changes. If I want to see something different overall, I would think I would present that as a discussion item for the board.
As like an agenda
Yeah,
item.
because then the board can say yay or nay, and if they say yay, then it goes to the policy committee.
And they write up the policy.
This was brought up at the board meeting under perspective policies where Kevin made a short case
Oh.
and then
Okay,
it was suggested that it was sent to policy committee.
Yeah.
So we did go through that process. I believe it was at
okay.
I thought it was.
November board meeting or.
I mean, it is complicated. I'm trying to understand what would be the best way, but it sounds like the board already considered it. I was
I
not
think
aware
we
of
were
that.
three were gone, so that's why we're down here.
Well, and I think it was really brief and it wasn't defined exactly what we
Yeah.
would be discussing in the policy committee.
Oh.
So there was a very brief discussion about the flag display and salutes, this policy, but I don't remember like what exactly like the discussion was. It was maybe just referred back to policy committee, but it wasn't something that we actually had conversation around. I mean, yes, I mean, I have a lot of opinions and thoughts that, you know, I feel strongly about, but don't necessarily belong in a policy.
And yes, David, I will reach out to OSBA for clarification on how this process ought to work.
Right.
And then I'll let you know when I hear back from them on it.
That's awesome.
And then, so moving forward with this particular item, I will have it as a separate agenda item on our January board meeting for the board to vote
Thank you.
Okay.
You did an amazing job with a very complicated situation.
Yes.
So thank you so
on.
much.
You're very welcome.
It wasn't that hard though. Just take out 4 words for 1 word.
No, the update was easy. Somehow I knew we'd spend more time on that than some of these other.
I know.
ones.
I
didn't discuss this.
Okay, public input,
We have none.
okay? Board items, community center proposal discussion. We had a discussion about this and we had a letter ready to send and we never did. And so we do need to, let the Mr. Ledesma and what's the other band's name?
Ethan?
Yep.
Dennis,
Dennis.
To, you know, what our intentions are. As the superintendent indicated, this is the building where the administration is most likely going to move.
So we just need to vote on sending the letter that we proposed. Is that the
Well,
vote that we
it's a
want?
few little tweaks, but
So
David?
from the May board meeting is when we discussed this last. As I recall, and I rewatched most of the recording, David had not been a part of, as well as many other board members, had not been a part of crafting that letter.
Yeah.
And was not comfortable sending it without the board having some input on what the contents of the letter were and what we were going to say. So without reading the letter verbatim in that meeting, I gave a brief synopsis of the reasons that we were potentially going to respectfully decline. But we did not publish that letter. We did not issue that letter.
Is it David?
And no, and partly we
No, I
will.
remember that because I was like, well, wait a minute here. I mean, I felt like we needed to consider it more clearly.
Yeah.
And again, that was one that came out of the facilities committee.
Right.
That had not been considered fully by the board. And I was like, well, we need to have a discussion about that. It can't just be the facility committee sending out this letter. And I had some questions just about, so help me understand what the district plan is around facilities, right? I want to really know more about, regardless of this, we've got a bunch of facilities. They're all costly to update. They're all costly to maintain. I mean, and so if we're going to hold on to these things, I wanted to understand more what our long-term ability to deal with these properties that we have that we're going to need to maintain over time. So I had thought we should really consider it more clearly rather than just I mean, obviously that was 6 months ago plus, so a lot has happened since then. But that was at the time, it's like, I thought we should really not just send something off without us being clear and having better discussion
Do you
for the
feel
full
like
board.
you've gotten
And then-
that?
Adrian.
And then just to give you a quick update, so Ellen Ledesma had contacted me about a month and a half ago saying he wanted to know where we were on our decision making. They were thinking about shopping this project out to someplace in North Bend, but wanted, you know, Alan's heart is with the Coos Bay School District, so he's like, I want to make sure that, you know, if you guys want to do this, if you want to move forward with it, I'll give you the first opportunity for that. And unfortunately, our agenda for last month was very full to begin with, so it didn't get put on that month's agenda. And so that's why we're back to discussing it now.
Yeah.
So I want to say from my discussion with him, it's, you know, we don't have to necessarily give him a concrete, like, absolutely, we're going to do this, but is this something that, you know, are we remotely interested in this project? You know, if so, then let's schedule some sort of a work session or something and look at all the details, because there's a lot of details that haven't been presented to us. And I think there's a lot of details that the 7 of us would need to know before we would approve such a project. But just, they would like to know if it's something that we're interested in moving forward with.
Yes or no? Right?
And to let them know sooner rather than later. And if we're not interested at all, then yeah, we can let them know so they can move forward with their project.
Yeah.
I think that was part of the information I didn't really feel like comfortable like I had was, you know, what is the value of this property? I mean, as a district, I'm like, is this, you know, so if we were to sell it, you know, would we get, you know, $2 million for the property, or we would get $10 because it's in a floodplain, you know? And so I just think for me, as a board member, it would be important. Like, you know, if we're looking at our future and this could bring in revenue to sell and we didn't need it anymore, then maybe it would make sense.
Can I move that we put this discussion to the next agenda, when we'll have more information from the superintendent about what the future use of the building would be and others? I know it puts them off, and well, Desmond, those guys, they have to make a decision on their own anyway where they want to be, but I think this is going to take, if you want a bigger discussion about facilities in general, I think we should put it on a different agenda item.
Well, I think they're wasting their time. Right? It's easy, send a letter out, put a new date on it, today's date, and from her signature, put your signature.
Yeah, the letter needs a little
Little
updating.
tweak,
There's,
so,
yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is we intend to use it, and I think that's the issue right now. If we do indeed intend to use it, which, you know, we'll hear from Justin at the next meeting, what his exact plans are for this building.
No one way.
But I did ask him to at least touch on it today so that they got an idea, if they're listening, that it is an idea of ours to use this building. So,
Yeah, well, you need.
I mean, we can have a fuller discussion, but at least it's in the public that we're looking at using this building.
And from my understanding, they have a big interest in using the fields. I think that's one of the priorities, and then a portion of the building, right? And so I don't know, if situation where it might be beneficial to
Have a discussion.
share it or split it or who knows what, but we number one, don't know exactly what their intentions are. And we didn't at the time, and we might not know until January, February, what our intentions for this building are.
Exactly.
So that's.
And how robust a use we're going to make out of it. So,
Yeah, through the chair, Addie, it's highly unlikely that we're gonna need this entire space.
Right.
Right, I could see the district office being down in this hallway.
Yeah.
Right, so just, you know, there's lots of factors,
Yeah.
right, like Marnie said, so.
So maybe we just invite
does
them.
anybody else have any comments?
I also talked to Alan probably right around, I think he was calling quite a few people. And I think one of the things too, when Alan came in and presented, is I told them if we were to hear something again, I needed something clearer. It felt there was a lot of good-hearted intention, but not clear, concise thoughts in it. And I think David had a great question too, that I don't think we ever got answered. If we wanted to, not saying we do, is that something we can even do? Can we hand over property, or what is that around that? What are the rules around that? And so I would be interested before we cross everything out and say, no, like, I'd like more information. And then if they don't like that we need more time and information, then they can go ahead and shop where they need to shop. But I definitely am interested.
Do we want to invite them back?
Yeah. Why don't we put this on the agenda for next month and invite them back to make a fuller presentation
And it sounds
on
like we
what
need
their
some
plans
information
would,
on our
because
side.
last time I talked to them, it wasn't just that they wanted part of this building, they wanted it all.
For free.
For free, yeah,
And
so,
I think we should require drug tests too,
I think,
because it's getting pretty ridiculous, but.
I think, that was, I think the other thing that I recall that I think I had requested was information from the district side as well.
yeah,
So it wasn't just them presenting, but
Yeah,
I didn't feel like, first of all, and I think I said this at that meeting, as an entity, normally if I'm going to sell something, I've got to do it in a public way where everybody has opportunity. I mean, I can't just pick somebody and make a private deal with them. It's got to be fair and equitable and upfront. And so that was, I think, the question I asked is, if we were to, what are our legal requirements in terms of anything that we would have to do? Because we need to follow a due process,
Yeah.
whatever that looks like. So, and again, that presupposes that it's in the district's interest as board members establishing our interest.
Yeah,
to do it
exactly.
in the first place, but
well, that's why I think if Diane would like to hear from them again, some more complete plans, I think it makes sense for all of us to hear them at this.
That might be good for Justin. Has Justin sat down with
Justin,
them?
Yeah, you really have never sat in on one of
Mr.
those, have you?
Beacom and Ledesma, have you sat down with them and had this?
I have, I mean, it was maybe the first month of the job, they met with me to review the proposal that they had submitted to you guys.
And did it raise questions or concerns for you?
I have lots of questions.
yeah.
Okay.
Right, I do think it's worth continuing the discussion. I think based on, and I'm speaking for them and you a little bit, so I'm summarizing, but I think based on the first presentation, there was a lot of unknowns.
Yes.
Right? You guys asked really good questions. Some of those questions need to be answered. I think they've gone back to the drawing table and I think they've adjusted what they want to be able to do. And I did share with them that we were considering making a move to here for the reasons I stated. So,
Okay, good. Okay, so that was
Yes.
next agenda.
I will invite them to the next board meeting to present, and add them as an agenda. item.
Perfect, thank you.
And
Followed
then
by-
Arnie, you made a motion about this discussion. Can you remind us what that was?
Yeah, it was just to postpone it until the next meeting.
I'm excited to know what he's gonna
It was never seconded. That's all I wanted. I thought the discussion had gone really well.
Okay? We don't need a full
No,
motion
we
to put it up till the next meeting. Okay, board member highlights. Would you like to
Nope.
share
No, I'm gonna hold on my comments.
about pushing a car up the,
A lot of people did good stuff.
they did? And you worked with a lot of kids over there. And they all stepped up, I heard.
Oh, definitely.
Well, thank you for that, Kevin. and Thank you for being there and the.
Yeah, I appreciated hearing you were there, especially when I heard about the car that was stuck.
Yeah,
Cause I could just imagine where it was.
at the hill by the cemetery.
Arnie, did you
Nope,
have
I'm good right
anything?
now.
Diane?
Not a thing for me.
David?
I just wanted to share, it's been interesting, hearing our superintendent's agenda and words coming from the schools and watching them adjust to a new way of doing things. I was at Sunset and I was like, I heard them talking about stuff. I know where this is coming from. So, any kind of time there's change, it takes people a while to wrap around and accommodate and adopt those things. So I can see it still maybe not 100% comfortable for everybody, which I guess is the point to some degree. I thought I'd just share that because it was certainly noticeable.
Kim?
Yeah, I've been doing my thing.
Adrian?
Doing great.
Yeah, to echo what, David said, I've heard some mutterings and murmurings as well, both good and bad about how things are going.
Yeah.
I think the bad is more of a pushback and, not wanting to make change rather than having a really negative opinion of what's being asked for staff. So that is interesting to follow.
Well, I met with, not with the schools, but I said I attended this meeting with the Education Committee for the Democratic Party. And we were just talking, a bunch of educators and legislators talking about the governor's budget and how big it was now, you know, and how much more money that the governor had given us. And then they started talking about how PERS rates were going up and we're gonna eat up all of that increase that the governor was giving us. But they all the legislators that were there were taking the tack that this was a good starting point of a discussion. Even though it was much larger than it had been in the past, they're still looking to get.
Thank you. I just, maybe a word to Justin and Marina, is just, I read that too, and I was wondering if we are able to identify what the PERS change is for our district. I know there's a high variability,
Yeah.
and some of the numbers I saw up front apply to a few districts, but not necessarily most of the districts.
Exactly.
But I also know we are one that had a side agreement. And so I know that side agreement's expiring, so I didn't know how that was gonna impact us as well.
Okay, so maybe we could ask you guys to update us on that,
Next
you and
board meeting.
Marina.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Good question.
Okay, is there anything else? Well, that was a very good board member, guys. It's only 7 o'clock.
What? It's 8.
Depends on what- it depends on what- He was absolutely right.
I was right, you were. I know.
Did you bang her down?
Okay. Meeting's adjourned.